All right, folks, so it's going to be real important that we take care of our Hackamore and our Hackamore setup, our Bozels, our hangers, and our reins, because clearly you're going to either you have or you're going to invest a fair bit of money into this piece of equipment that if you take care of it, it's going to last you the rest of its lifetime. And so how do we go about caring for it? Well, the first thing is preventative maintenance, not causing problems that we have to fix later. And how can we do that? So preferably, the Hackamore stays out of extreme heat, so you don't leave it in the dash of your car, you don't leave it in the back of your truck, you don't leave it just sitting on the asphalt kind of a thing. Like, you try to keep it out of extreme heat. Heat and the dryness will ruin a Hackamore really fast. And the other thing that will ruin a Hackamore really fast is it getting extremely wet and then drying out, because then you get that hot, cold, or wet and dry. And the rawhide in these things is kind of like what we'll call a living, breathing thing, and it has life to it. And so we want to make sure that it sustains that life and that it stays hydrated. And so we don't want it to get wet and dry, wet and dry, wet and dry. And so what can we do with this? Well, if you ride your horse and say your horse gets real sweaty, you can simply just take a rag once you get done and wipe this off. You don't need to go get a bunch of water, like, don't go do that, but you can just wipe this off. And if you notice that it's starting to get dry, then you can use there's something called like a Vaquero cream that you can use with this, and we've got some here. This is actually like a leather cream that you can use that I've got here in my back pocket if I can get it out, show you guys. And so this is called Skidmore's leather cream, and this is something we've like used on our saddles, but they've also got like a rawhide cream that you can use, and simply you just use it pretty conservatively, and it smells really good. And this will help keep your Hackamore or your Bozels. Don't put it on your Hackamore, don't put it on your reins, put it on your Bozels, and it'll help keep these hydrated, keep the life in them. It'll make them last a lot longer. But the biggest thing that I find is preventative maintenance and not creating problems initially. So making sure if they get super sweaty, you just take a rag and wipe it off. Don't leave it out in the heat. Don't let it get super wet. You know, things happen and you certainly have to adjust. Say if it falls into a thing of water or whatever, just dry it off the best you can, but don't go stick it in the microwave or sit it outside and try to dry it out or anything silly like that. So preventative maintenance is number one, but then you can also use like a rawhide cream to keep these things hydrated. And with your reins, when we want to make sure we take care of our hair reins, and so so when we take care of our hair reins, this is really important, is that usually when you get your hair reins, you'll notice when you buy some, they come wound really, really tight. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating, like they'll have these reins and they'll be looped up like really tight and tied together, and they've been sitting on the shelf for a while. So they can be a little difficult when you first get them. And what we've done with ours here in the barn aisle is we've taken them and tied them to either side of the barn aisle and just left them when no one's coming through. Or you can take them outside and tie them when it's not raining or super, super hot and stretch them out. You want to get these, just like your Hackamores, when we're shaping them, they hold life, they hold some shape to them once you get them going. Same thing with these, because you'll notice if they stay wrapped up really tight, when you unfold them, they'll want to stay like kinks in them. So you'll stretch these back out and get them to where they stay straight, because you want your reins, you don't want your kinks in your reins. And then once you're done using it, you'll always want to take your reins off of your Bozel, and either, if you're going to loop them up, loop them with a bigger slack in it. And if you're starting to find that your Hackamore or your reins are starting to get kinks in it, simply go tie it to 2 different posts to where it's pretty tight and just leave it for a while. And so same thing with these. You don't want to go washing your hair reins too much. You want to make sure you try to keep the sweat off of them. You don't want them to get super, super wet, but they're very durable. I mean, it's horsehair reins, so they're going to last you, but you don't want to leave it tied up to your Hackamore, because it'll put kinks in the reins that'll last a while. Actually, this set got left on, so I can show you what a bad example looks like. You'll notice, see here around the knot where it was tied. See how it has a loop to it by itself? We've got to go and actually re-stretch this out, because you'll see how it always wants to return back. That's what happens. And what ends up happening to this is that these break down faster because the hair inside breaks, and it gets dry and brittle, and so it keeps wanting to return back to where it was, because it was sitting in the Hackamore like this, and then this was run around, and so it keeps wanting to return to that shape of how it was sitting in the Hackamore or the Bozalito. And so that's something you don't want to happen. And so you can see where there's a bit of a kink in it here, and these reins are pretty dry right now, and so we got to get back and stretch those back out and kind of give them some TLC. But preventative maintenance is the biggest thing you can do. Try to keep them dry. When they get sweaty, wipe them off and keep them in a dry spot, not in extreme heat. That's the best thing you can do. But if you do notice that you're running into trouble, get some rawhide cream and get your Hackamore or your Bozell rehydrated.